Good Thursday afternoon to you, everybody. It is the middle of summer and it's the middle of Thursday. I know, kind of an odd time to meet face to face, but I was putting together a graphic for everybody just to kind of let you know what the weather's going to do the rest of the day. And I decided, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and do a video. I want to do more of these because to me, it's easier to talk about the weather to answer your questions than it is to spend half an hour drawing and putting layers on a graphic just to get a point across. So I hope that's okay with you. You get to see my lovely mug in the middle of a Thursday afternoon. So I want to jump into the forecast here. What we have going on today is a pretty similar thing compared to what we've had the last couple of days, where we're kind of waiting to see what develops. This weather pattern, anytime we have a northwest flow, and we've talked about this, anytime we have a northwest flow in the summertime, it's typically that ring of fire pattern where you've got a big dome of heat in the plains, and you get these complexes of storms that develop on the northern periphery of that. And we're tracking these storms hour by hour to see where they develop and where they end up going. And I've mentioned this before, but if you're new to this pattern or new to this idea, or maybe you're thinking, boy, weather forecasts have been really awful. My phone app's been really awful over the last week or so. Weather forecasts are not good in this pattern. There's not very good recognition with the modeling. Remember, the models give us all the solutions that could happen. And as a meteorologist, our job is to say, that model looks good. I believe that's what's going to happen based on past experience or whatever happens to be. Or we say, that model's off. It doesn't quite have a handle on that. Well, the problem is experienced meteorologists this time of year are looking at this pattern. They're looking at models and they're saying to all the models, they're all off. And that's the problem. So there's not a lot of help meteorologically speaking as a backup. So a lot of times what we have to do in this pattern where they don't recognize where storms develop, we have to nowcast and we're forecasting 6 to 12 hours out versus a forecast where we can see something coming 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days out. All right. So that's kind of what we're in. And I'm not saying that because we've had a botched forecast. I feel like our forecasts have been pretty well on over the last week or so, but it is super tricky and it gives meteorologists a headache. I just want to kind of give you a precursor. That's the pattern we're in right now. And so what we saw this morning was that big complex of storms back towards Iowa. The models were indicating it was going to weaken as it moved in, and it did. But we've been left with a lot of clouds behind it, and we had a little bit of rain here and there, not a lot of rain out of it, but we've got a lot of cloud cover, and so that has helped to keep us a little bit more stable today. Sun is poking out in spots. We've seen a lot more sunshine to our west, and as a result, we're starting to heat things up and become unstable again. So we do have another storm risk later on this evening. So want to take you through the setup. Briefly, just want to say hi to everyone that's on. I appreciate you joining us here on a Thursday afternoon. Hopefully all of you are at work right now getting paid. Jeff, hi. Happy Thursday to you. Happy August 1st, Sage Yourself says on our YouTube channel. Thanks for all the people joining us on our YouTube channel as well. I really appreciate that. Again, we're secretly trying to grow that without trying to grow that. Once we get to 1,000 subscribers on there, we're able to do a little bit more content on there, which is great. JP, Darlene, hello. Stephen, hello to you. Jill, good afternoon to you. Elizabeth's with us today. Hi, Elizabeth. Cindy, Maxwell. Maxwell prefers lives. That's awesome. I agree. It's easier to talk. Megan, absolutely. That's so sweet. Yeah, and Sage Yourself, you're absolutely right. I think that's a little generous. I would, I'd probably go a little lower than that. We'll see. Savannah, great to know. Thanks for the feedback. Anne, hello. Jane, hello. And Emily, hello. Guys, support our sponsors above as well. They get a free broadcast here, but they're all just wonderful family-owned businesses, local to here in Northwest Indiana. So please support them if you can. All right, let's dive in. So this is what Storm Prediction Center is saying here this afternoon in terms of storm risk. Notice the bullseye is downstate, so it's away from the region, Indianapolis over towards Columbus, Ohio, down towards Kentucky. That's where the bullseye is for severe weather risk this afternoon and evening. Already seeing a pretty decent complex of storms, and I think that's the reason for that risk is that complex. Off towards the north, though, you notice from here up towards Wisconsin, we're under a marginal risk, so not a huge risk, but there's the risk for some severe weather, and I would agree with that. So I'll show you what I mean here as we kind of dive into the forecast. As of right now, this is what's currently happening. We're still locked into the clouds. We have had some sun peaks here and there, but look at the clearing that's taking place back towards just west of Chicago. As you get back into the Rockford area, they've had some good sunshine. We've been locked into the clouds. This area of clouds we have now is still left over from that big complex that developed in Iowa last night. It's just kind of fading and it's kind of fizzling over us. in dispersing. So these clouds have helped to keep us a little bit more stable. It's ultra muggy outside still. Dew points are in the low 70s. It's super thick. I know the humidity doesn't feel good when you walk outside. Thank goodness temperatures haven't responded a whole lot, right? Because we have the clouds. We're in the low to mid 80s right now. It still feels pretty awful outside, if you ask me. But you notice this feature down to the south, just a huge explosion of thunderstorms, which happens this time of year in this instability that they have where it's sunny. Big explosion of storms downstate. That's our severe storm action that's going to head over into southern Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky. But look at the clouds. I mean, they hit jet stream level and poof, they just go. And we're actually going to probably in an hour and a half or so get some of the high clouds off of that basically explosion of thunderstorm heads, right? So the clouds go up, they go up 40, 50,000 feet. Jet stream takes them and disperses them. And what we're seeing is we'll see kind of another layer of high clouds come over from thunderstorms that are way down south. It's just incredible how they travel this time of year. But our attention turns to, and I'm going to show the radar on here. Here's your explosion of storms. This will be a complex that rolls east, not affecting us. But what we're going to watch is this little swirl up here. So this is the low pressure itself. This is really the last leg in this weather pattern before we clear out for a little bit. Should set up for a pretty nice weekend around here. But this is really the last thing we have to deal with. And this will be with us tomorrow as well. All right. But out ahead of it, what we're expecting is some thunderstorm development, not just in Wisconsin, as you see, but it's areas of Iowa and northern Illinois. We're likely to see some development over the next couple hours in that area as this push of energy comes in. You can see that push coming in from the north with that swirl. Remember, the atmosphere is fluid. It's like a bathtub. So if we push something with water, it makes a wave come out. And that wave of energy here will likely ignite some development off towards our north and the west. That being said, that's going to be our risk. That's going to be the area we're watching on radar as we go throughout the evening. I am not expecting blockbuster severe weather. I'm not expecting, and I get a lot of messages about this every single day. Are we going to get another derecho? Are we going to have wind damage from this? I am not expecting that kind of setup tonight, all right? We're not expecting a giant complex to develop that rolls through. Rather, they'd be more scattered thunderstorms that have heavy downpours and the threat for some pockets of damaging wind within those, as any thunderstorm really can do this time of year, all right? So that's what we've got our eyes on off towards the north and the west. So let's briefly go through the modeling, and then I promise this to be quick. So I'll answer your questions. We'll get you on your way here on this Thursday. But this is kind of what the modeling's doing. Pretty good setup of storms downstate. I agree with that. This is the model that has the best handle. And notice how as we get into the 3, 4, 5 o'clock hours, we're starting to develop storms now. All right. Big complex east, but here's what we're watching out of Wisconsin. So see how it has a good handle on what's going on right now. Organized. All these multiple cells become a little bit more organized. And that would likely head our way as that low pressure swirls in later on this evening with some rain and storms. Again, severe weather threat is there with this. It's not huge. I think damaging winds and heavy rain would be the two primary threats out of that, in addition to some lightning. I kind of hesitate to think that everyone's going to get rain. Most of the models bring a pretty solid chunk of storms through here. We'll see what happens. We'll see how it congeals and if it even develops. But all indication is that it'll be more scattered in nature as it moves through. But again, heavy downpours and damaging winds would be your threat this evening. And then tonight we would quiet down, maybe some lingering showers. What happens tonight is this low is going to pinwheel right over northwest Indiana. And as a result, our wind's going to shift off the lake. Lake's going to become much choppier tomorrow. And we're also, with a little daytime heating, going to pop a few additional downpours as we go throughout the day tomorrow. And they'll be a little bit slower moving. So notice the HRRR model develops as this low is right here. It develops a downpour that kind of sits around for a few hours in our northern counties. You can see that there kind of coming off the lake. It may look like lake effect. But again, scattered downpours tomorrow is going to be really the key to the forecast. I think most hours tomorrow are dry, but we'll be watching those downpours, and they could be slow moving tomorrow with a decent wind off the lake. And then it heads on out of here. We look good Saturday. Sunday would look good as well. I'll be keeping my eye on a frontal boundary off towards the north. This is Saturday afternoon here. You can see a little hint of something off towards the north. That'll be a frontal boundary dropping in. And this will kickstart what looks to be another active week next week with more big complexes of storms developing in the plains, okay? So in terms of severe threat here this evening, again, I'm not seeing a huge robust threat. We're going to keep our eye on the radar to the north. It's not this Wisconsin stuff we're going to be getting. It's going to be stuff that develops or activity that develops in southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois over the next couple hours, and then that would roll through here this evening. But again, I'm not anticipating a big severe weather event this evening. Okay. All right. Be happy to answer your questions, and then we'll get you on your way. In terms of, and let me answer this because I'm sure some of you will ask, in terms of humidity, when are we going to say goodbye to this humidity? We do get some drier air this weekend, but it's not that much drier. It's still going to be humid this weekend. It's really hard to eradicate humidity this time of year because typically the high dew point air goes all the way up into Canada. And a lot of that has to do with the corn belt, the corn crop growing in the plains. Remember, we always talk about that corn sweat is what it's called. Puts off a lot of moisture in the atmosphere, and you just can't get rid of that very easily. There is some indication long-term that we get a shot of fresher air in the following weekend, but we'll see if that holds true in the modeling for sure. All right. Yep. Tom says just a sprinkle in Munster this morning. Tom, it looked like when that complex was coming through, the whole thing was falling apart. That rain was kind of shriveling as it moved in, but it certainly looked like it was going to rain all morning, right? The clouds were kind of heavy. It looked like it was going to downpour, and there wasn't much moisture left when it got here. Kind of interesting how that happened. Ann's excited about maybe Munster Highland finally getting a little bit of rain for sure. Sage yourself, in terms of Lake County Fair, that was my favorite fair to do live shots on. Porter County Fair was great, don't get me wrong. But I remember doing live shots for Lakeshore Public Television at the Lake County Fair, and we had frog legs and all sorts of fun things. I had some of my best memories from that fair. But anyway, if you're trying to get there tomorrow, I don't think it's going to be a washout tomorrow as well at all. I would go. Just keep in mind there are going to be scattered downpours on radar, so you might get a downpour. Just go into the animal barns and then come on out after the downpour is over. I don't see anything lingering for a long time tomorrow. We'll just have to keep an eye on, especially early in the day, some of those slower moving downpours. So I know I said, I don't see anything lingering for a long time, but the downpours are going to be slow moving. I think they'll be scattered enough that you won't have to worry about it. Okay. Maxwell says favorite pattern right now. Maxwell, I would have to agree. And the reason why this pattern is my favorite is because it's so darn challenging. It really is. Tom asks, August temperatures below normal. Tom, it looks like we're going to start on the cooler side. Well, so we're going to start the month on the warmer side, but then we're going to get into, at least as of right now, it looks like we're going to get into a little bit of a cool spell. I mean, cool spell this time of year is 70s and 80s, right? But it does look like we go a little bit below average for a while, but there's going to be some searing heat just down to our south. So next week, the pattern that kind of sets up is there's going to be 90s and 100s just south of us, and there'll be some kind of boundary over us. That's going to be your storm chance. And then it's going to be 60s and 70s on the north side. So it's interesting, depending on where that sets up. I mean, if this thing sets up 50 miles north, we're going to be in the 90s all week. I don't see that happening, but it's going to be really close, and it's going to be really interesting next week for sure. All right. You're welcome. Absolutely welcome. Justin, hi. Jacob's late. That's okay. Jacob, in summary, we've got eyes on the radar for this area right here. It hasn't developed yet, but this little push of energy coming out of Minnesota will likely trigger some storms as we get over the next couple hours. It's those storms we'll watch perhaps move into the region this evening. Super tricky forecast because things are just blown up all over the place in this atmosphere. But that's kind of how I picture things going this evening. And in terms of severe threat, I don't think there's a big severe threat. Could have some stronger thunderstorms with it if they get going. But overall, I'm not expecting like a derecho or anything like that. I don't think it's going to be a widespread severe weather kind of night. All right. And we're still fairly stable. We've got some instability. All right. We've got enough to support severe weather. But relatively speaking, compared to areas around us that have had sunshine, we're a lot more stable than those areas are for sure. Let's see. Oh, that's an interesting, Court. That's an interesting comment. Have you ever thought of inverting your cursor? Yeah. Court, I can absolutely do that. I'll do that off air because it'll take me a little while. I'll probably have to Google how to do it, but I'm getting older. But yeah, just go into settings. I'll make that cursor bigger for sure. And because I'm getting older, it'll help me out as well. I should probably make all the font and text bigger too. No, that's a great idea though, because when I'm going around on here, I don't always have software pulled up. Sometimes I do with our radar maps. I can draw on it, but I certainly can't using this. So there's that. All right, JP, appreciate that. Yeah. Maxwell brings up a good thought here. The Euro has been off the last few days, showing a complex of storms and then backed off. Yeah, Maxwell, the reason for that is models just don't get it to begin with. And number two, the Euro is just not high res enough, right? That's why we have to rely on like the HRRR and the WRAP and the NAM Nest and stuff like that. We rely on those for the high res stuff, which gives us a better picture. I mean, the Euro is just putting blobs all over the Great Lakes, which is kind of how it goes. But yeah, I wouldn't rely on the Euro. What I rely on the Euro for is pattern recognition. So it tells me that, yeah, I think we're going to be getting into this pattern. And then it's got to be all high res after that, because this pattern is literally something we're forecasting 6 to 12 hours out max, because it's changing so often, right? And one of the big problems with these complexes of storms is the models don't recognize the pool of cold air that develops with them, all right? That keeps them going and sustains them. So a lot of times models will develop these complexes of storms pretty nicely, but they don't keep them going long enough because they don't recognize that cold air that develops as a result behind it. And if they were to put that into the modeling, then we would have a problem when normal cold fronts go through here, where it would develop a cold pool air, which doesn't really happen with cold fronts. It's generally a giant cold pool, right? And that would screw up all the modeling. So it's real tricky. It's real tricky. And that's why this pattern is the only pattern that models really don't do well on. So there's that. Let's see. Kevin's saying, do you think Chicago Cubs could make a playoff push? Kevin, anything's possible with those Cubbies. I'm not too sure about that, and I'm not very confident that they are going to make a playoff push. But boy, we're getting a playoff baseball real soon. I can't believe it. August, September, then we're done, right? We get into it for sure. Yeah, Maxwell, you're absolutely welcome. Hi, Ethan. Ethan's with us. Can we see some weird weather tomorrow afternoon? Ethan, I don't think there's going to be much of a severe threat tomorrow afternoon. I don't. I think more of a heavy rain threat from any of those slow-moving downpours. But overall, I think the severe threat would be today, as we're on the more unstable side of the system for sure. All right. James and Nancy are absolutely welcome. Thanks for taking time to join me here this afternoon. All right. I promised I would keep it brief, so that's it. All right. That's all I got. You can go back and watch this if you missed anything. I think we covered most everything, but we'll keep our eyes glued on the radar. I'll pass along an update if needed here as we go throughout the rest of the day. But enjoy it. I mean, I think we have escaped. We'll see how this evening goes, but I think we've escaped this pattern without anything crazy, right? Looking at this on Sunday, looking at it last week, kind of recognizing this pattern, we can tend to get some big storms out of this. And most of them have been down to our south and the west. They've gotten rocked. I mean, don't mistake this thing for a fluke, because they've gotten rocked downstate. Illinois, Missouri, they've gotten several large complexes of storms. Iowa got hit pretty hard as well. So a lot of areas got hit hard in the plains with rounds of storms and power outages and heavy rain and wind. We've escaped pretty much all these. So we'll keep our fingers crossed for this evening. Again, I don't see a huge threat this evening, but I do see some storms rolling in, and we'll keep our eye on it. Okay. All right, guys, enjoy the rest of your evening and stay tuned.